I always believed that trust was the cornerstone of any strong marriage. Emily and I had been married for 6 years, and through it all, I thought we had that trust down pat. We were that couple everyone else seemed to envy, no kids yet, just the two of us in our chocolate lab, Rocky, living a quiet life in a small town by the lake. I worked as a mechanic, running my own modest auto repair shop, while Emily was an elementary school teacher. We spent weekends hiking or taking the boat out, sipping cheap wine and watching sunsets from our deck. It was simple, but it was ours. I thought it was enough. God, I was a fool. This story really starts on a Saturday morning in late June. The kind of day where the sky was that bright, endless blue, and the breeze off the water was cool enough to make you forget how damn hot it actually was. I'd been up since dawn, loading gear into my truck for a weekend fishing trip with Pete and Greg, my two best friends since high school. Emily was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and humming to herself. Her hair was still damp from her shower, dark curls tumbling past her shoulders, and she wore that old university hoodie of mine that hung halfway down her thighs. The sight made me pause for a second in the doorway, smiling to myself. "Think you'll survive without me for a couple of days?" I teased, wrapping my arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to the side of her neck. She laughed, swatting me with the spatula. Barely, she smirked. "But try not to drown out there, okay? I don't want to have to collect life insurance this young." She turned in my arms, sliding her hands up my chest. Her eyes sparkled with that playful look that had pulled me in all those years ago, and I couldn't resist kissing her. It was soft and warm, lingering just a little too long for a couple who had been married 6 years. I pulled back first, grinning like an idiot. "I'll be back Sunday night, I promised. Call me if you need anything." She just smiled, brushing a hand through my hair. "I will. You boys have fun." Looking back, that morning plays in my head on a loop. The way her eyes never quite met mine. How she lingered in that kiss just a second too long, like she was trying to etch the memory into her mind. But hindsight's a bitch, and at that moment, I didn't think anything of it. The first day out on the lake was perfect. The fish were biting, the beer was cold, and for a while, it felt like old times, no stress, no nagging worry in the back of my mind. Pete was halfway through a story about his latest disastrous date when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Emily's face flashed on the screen, her smile bright and eyes crinkling at the corners. I swiped to answer, chuckling. "Miss me already?" There was a pause, just long enough to be strange, before her voice came through, a little breathless. "Hey, babe. Just checking in. You guys doing okay?" "Yeah, we're good. How's your day going?" "Oh, she said, voice lilting with forced cheerfulness. "Just catching up on some laundry. Might go for a run later." I leaned back, squinting against the sun. "Sounds exciting." "Don't be a jerk," she laughed, and it sounded real enough. "Okay, I'll let you get back to fishing. Love you." "Love you too," I said, and the line went dead. I pocketed my phone, shrugging off the tiny flicker of something that settled in my gut. Emily was fine. Everything was fine. I didn't get home until Sunday night, sunburned and smelling like fish guts. The driveway was dark when I pulled in, and for a second, I figured Emily had gone to bed early. But then I noticed her car was gone. My first thought was that maybe she'd gone out with her friend Rachel. It wasn't until I unlocked the front door and stepped inside that the silence really hit me. No lights on. No note on the counter. Rocky bounded over, tail wagging, but there was no click of Emily's heels in the hallway, no warm hug to pull me in. I glanced at the clock on the stove, 10:23 p.m. "Hey, girl," I muttered, scratching behind Rocky's ears. "Where's Mom, huh?" I tried her cell. It rang twice before going to voicemail. My stomach twisted, but I told myself to chill out. Maybe she had her phone on silent. Maybe they'd gone for a late movie or something. The bedroom was neat as always, bed made, her clothes folded in the laundry basket. I tossed my bag on the floor and pulled off my hat, running a hand through my hair. That's when I noticed it. A dress. Simple and red, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. Draped over the back of the chair by her vanity, a pair of heels kicked off beside it. I frowned, walking over to brush my fingers over the soft fabric. Emily hardly ever wore dresses, and if she'd been with Rachel, it would have been leggings and a sweatshirt, not something this fancy. I didn't have time to think about it because headlights flashed across the curtains. I moved to the window just as Emily's car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on gravel. She climbed out, swaying a little in those damn heels, one hand gripping the door for balance. Her hair was a mess, lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth. She glanced around the yard, eyes flickering to the dark windows like she was hoping I'd already gone to bed. My pulse drummed in my ears, loud and heavy. The first icy trickle of doubt slipped into my chest. I watched her smooth her hair, adjust the hem of her dress, and take a deep breath before heading up the porch steps. I backed away from the window, chest tight, and sank down on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The front door creaked open, then shut. I heard her heels clicking across the hardwood, stopping in the hallway. "Babe," she called, her voice small and tentative. "You home?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. The words were trapped behind the suffocating weight in my chest. Finally, I forced myself to speak. "Yeah. I'm home." The silence that followed was deafening. When Emily stepped into the bedroom, her eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second, like she hadn't actually expected me to answer. She froze in the doorway, one hand still gripping the frame, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The air felt thick, suffocating, like the few seconds right before a storm breaks. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early," she said, voice a little too bright. "It's almost 11, I replied flatly. "That's not early." "Oh," she laughed, but it came out shaky. "Right. I just thought you'd be back later." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, watching her. The dim light from the hallway threw half of her face in shadow, but I could see the faint smear of lipstick at the corner of her mouth, the flush high on her cheeks. Her dress was wrinkled, and there was a small tear in the hem that hadn't been there before. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated. I saw the moment she tried to decide which lie would sound the most convincing. "Out with Rachel," she said finally. "We got drinks." "At Mario's?" I asked. Her eyes flickered, just for a heartbeat. "No, the corner tap. Rachel wanted to try somewhere new." "Rachel's in Boston," I said. "She posted about it on Instagram." I watched the blood drain from her face, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Oh," she stammered. "Right. I forgot. I meant Sarah. I was out with Sarah. Sarah moved to Denver in February." She flinched. I didn't move, didn't blink, just let the silence stretch between us until she finally cleared her throat, hands twisting in the skirt of her dress. I must have mixed up." "Cut the shit, Emily," I snapped, louder than I'd meant to. She jumped, and I had to drag in a breath, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Just tell me the truth for once." Her eyes glistened, lip trembling like she might cry. For a second, I thought she might actually do it, just say the words, rip the Band-Aid off. But she just shook her head, chin dipping to her chest. "I was with an old friend," she whispered. "We just got drinks. That's all." I stared at her, throat tight with disbelief. "You expect me to believe that?" She bit her lip, eyes darting everywhere but at me. I don't know what you want me to say." I huffed out a humorless laugh, scrubbing a hand down my face. "Maybe the truth, for starters. Maybe why you're coming home at 11 at night, dressed like that, makeup smeared, and you can't even get your story straight." Her lower lip trembled. "You're being paranoid," she whispered. I shot to my feet, and she took a step back, eyes wide. "I'm being paranoid?" I barked. "You're lying to my face, and I'm the one being paranoid?" She winced, twisting her hands together. "You're scaring me." "Good," I snapped, though the words tasted like ash on my tongue. "Maybe I should be. Maybe you'd stop lying to me for once." She stared at the floor, blinking rapidly. For a moment, all I could hear was the ticking of the clock on the wall and the blood roaring in my ears. My hands were shaking, clenched into fists at my sides. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. "You know what?" I muttered, turning on my heel. "Forget it." "Where are you going?" she stammered. "Out," I growled, grabbing my keys off the dresser. "I need some air." "Please don't," she started, but I was already out the door, slamming it behind me hard enough to rattle the windows. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, knuckles white around the steering wheel and the radio blaring some old rock song I couldn't even focus on. The streets were dark and empty, the houses darkened except for the occasional porch light. I parked at the overlook by the lake eventually, cutting the engine and leaning back with a shaky breath. My hands were still trembling. I stared out at the water, watching the moon's reflection ripple with each gust of wind. My chest ached, that dull, heavy pain that made it hard to breathe, like someone had shoved a fist between my ribs and started squeezing. This couldn't be happening. Not Emily. She couldn't. We were happy, weren't we? God, how blind could I be? Every late night, every hastily ended phone call, every weekend where she had some excuse, her mother's, drinks with the girls, a school function, suddenly felt like glass shards digging into my skull. How long had it been going on? Who was he? Someone from work? Someone from town? Had they been in my house, in my bed? I squeezed my eyes shut, dragging a hand through my hair. Bile burned in my throat, and I leaned forward, elbows braced on the steering wheel, forcing in deep breaths. I needed to get it together. I needed to think. After what felt like forever, I turned my phone on, the screen bright in the darkness. A text from Pete, a couple of missed calls. But it was Emily's name at the top that made my stomach twist. "Please come home. I'm sorry. Can we just talk?" I stared at the words until they blurred, the fury that had been keeping me steady fading into something dull and hollow. I scrubbed a hand over my face, jaw clenched. "There's nothing to talk about," I texted back. "I just want to know who he is." The little dots appeared. Stopped. Started again. "It's not what you think. I swear." I stared at the screen until my vision swam, then tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, slumping back with a shaky breath. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe there was some explanation. But deep down, in that cold, gut-churning part of me that had been ignored for months, I knew better. This was just the beginning of the end. I pulled into the driveway just after 1 a.m., headlights sweeping across the front porch. Emily's car was still parked where she'd left it, but the house was dark. No lights in the windows, no silhouette behind the curtains. For a second, I almost convinced myself she'd gone to bed, like this whole mess might vanish if I just shut my eyes and pretended hard enough. But the front door was unlocked, and as I stepped inside, I could feel it, that suffocating tension hanging in the air, thicker than the summer humidity. My boots echoed hollowly on the hardwood as I kicked them off, tossing my keys into the dish by the door. I half expected her to come rushing out of the bedroom, eyes red-rimmed and lip trembling, spewing apologies. But the hallway was dark and empty, and the only sound was the tick of the clock above the kitchen sink. I took a breath, scrubbing a hand over my face, and moved to the living room. Emily was there, curled up on the far end of the couch in that old college hoodie, knees pulled to her chest. Her face was pale, eyes swollen and rimmed with smudged mascara. She didn't look at me, just stared down at her hands where they twisted in the fabric of her sleeves. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the coffee table, and the TV played on mute, some sitcom I didn't recognize. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, waiting for her to say something. She didn't. "Emily," I said finally, and she flinched like I'd slapped her. She looked up, eyes glossy and wide. "You came back," she whispered, like she hadn't really expected me to. "Who is he?" I asked, voice flat. Her breath hitched, shoulders curling inward. For a moment, she didn't answer, teeth sinking into her lower lip. I watched her eyes dart to the side, away from me, like she might try to lie again. The thought made my jaw clench so tight it ached. "Don't," I snapped, and her head jerked up, eyes wide and startled. "Don't you fucking lie to me again, Emily." I want a name. She blinked rapidly, breath shaky. For a second, I thought she might clam up again, but then she dragged a hand over her face, voice small and cracked. Ethan, she choked out. His name's Ethan. The name landed like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. I stared at her, waiting for the rest, the details, the explanations, the why. But she just stared at her hands, bottom lip trembling. Ethan? I bit out. Ethan Walker? Her eyes flickered to mine, wide and guilty. That was all the confirmation I needed. I barked out a laugh, sharp and humorless. You've gotta be fucking kidding me. Ethan Walker. My best friend since 5th grade. The guy who'd helped me rebuild the transmission on my first truck. The guy who'd stood beside me at my wedding, grinning like a damn idiot, slapping me on the back and saying I was the luckiest man alive. Christ, I'd been so fucking blind. How long? I bit out. She flinched, curling in tighter on herself. Derek, please. How long? I snarled, slamming a fist against the doorframe. She jumped, a tiny sob slipping out, but I was too far gone to care. 6 months, she whispered, voice cracking. Since New Year's. I laughed again, sharp, bitter. 6 months, I echoed. You've been fucking my best friend for 6 goddamn months. Please, she whimpered, tears streaking down her cheeks. It just happened, I didn't mean for it to. Oh, spare me the bullshit, I snapped. You don't accidentally fuck someone for half a year, Emily. Her face crumpled, hands shaking as she dragged them through her hair. I'm sorry, she choked. God, I'm so sorry, I didn't. You didn't what? I bit out, voice cold and flat. Didn't mean for me to find out? Didn't mean to get caught? She squeezed her eyes shut, shoulders shaking. Please, Derek, she sobbed. Just listen. Why? I snapped, voice cracking. Why him? She swallowed hard, voice small and raw. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. I was lonely, and you were always at the shop or with Pete Ann. Jesus Christ, I muttered, pinching the bridge of my nose. So this is my fault, is that it? Because I was working to pay our bills? No, God, no, Derek, that's not what I meant, she stammered, reaching for me. I felt so alone, and Ethan was there, and I wrenched back, her hand falling uselessly to the couch. So you fucked him, I snapped. Right. Makes perfect sense. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, cradling her head in her hands. Please, I love you, I never wanted to hurt you. I barked out another humorless laugh, dragging both hands through my hair. Well, mission failed there, sweetheart. She flinched, tears dripping down her chin. I'll do anything, she whimpered. Please, Derek, we can fix this. Fix this? I bit out. How, Emily? How the hell do we fix this? She stared at me, eyes wide and desperate. I'll do anything, she whispered. I'll go to therapy, I'll cut him off, I swear, please don't leave, please. I stared at her, at the red-rimmed eyes, the tear-streaked cheeks, the hands twisted so tightly in her hoodie that her knuckles were white. I'd never seen her so small, so broken. Some sick part of me felt almost vindicated, seeing her fall apart like this. But the rest of me was just numb. I turned on my heel, ignoring the way her breath hitched, the sob that caught in her throat. Derek. I need to get out of here, I muttered, grabbing my keys off the counter. Please, she choked, voice shrill and desperate. Please don't go. The door slammed behind me, cutting her off mid-sob. I made it halfway down the porch steps before the anger boiled over, and I spun, slamming my fist into the porch column hard enough to make the wood groan. Pain exploded up my arm, white-hot and searing, but I barely felt it. My vision blurred, rage and grief twisting in my gut like broken glass. The woman I'd loved for 6 years. My best friend since childhood. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled to the truck, chest heaving, and leaned against the hood, dragging in deep, shuddering breaths. 6 months. Every night she'd smiled at me, kissed me, pulled me into bed. Every I love you was a goddamn lie. I squeezed my eyes shut, jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. And then I slid into the driver's seat, cranked the engine, and peeled out of the driveway, tires spitting gravel. I needed to think. Or maybe I just needed to make sure Ethan Walker didn't see another sunrise. I don't remember the drive to Ethan's place. One minute I was peeling out of my driveway, and the next, I was parked on the street in front of his house. His porch light was on, casting a yellow glow over the patchy lawn, and his old Jeep sat in the driveway, right where I knew it would be. My hands were still shaking. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, staring at his front door. I should have thought this through, had some kind of plan. Instead, I felt like a live wire, every nerve buzzing with fury. The house was dark except for the porch light and a faint glow from the living room window. I got out of the truck, the slam of the door echoing in the quiet street, and stalked up the path to his door. I didn't bother knocking. My fist hit the wood hard enough to make the whole door rattle, the sound reverberating through the night. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard shuffling, a muffled curse, and the door swung open. Ethan stood there in a pair of gray sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, hair rumpled from sleep, rubbing his eyes. He blinked at me, confusion giving way to surprise, then something colder. "Derek," he said, his voice groggy. "What the hell?" I didn't answer. My fist shot out, catching him square in the jaw. His head snapped back, and he stumbled, crashing against the wall. A picture frame clattered to the floor, glass shattering across the hardwood. "Jesus Christ," he yelled, hands coming up defensively. "What the fuck, man?" I stepped into the house, kicking the door shut behind me. "What the fuck?" I echoed, voice low and shaking. "You seriously asking me that right now?" He straightened, one hand pressed to his jaw, eyes flashing with anger. "Have you lost your damn mind?" "Oh, I've lost more than that," I growled. "I've lost my wife. Thanks to you, you fucking snake." His expression changed, the anger slipping into something else, something tight and wary. His mouth opened and closed, 1,000 excuses on the tip of his tongue. "Derek, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I bit out, taking another step forward. "Don't you dare lie to me." "I know. Emily told me everything." He flinched, the color draining from his face. "Look, You've been fucking my wife for 6 months, I snarled, voice rising. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think you could keep sneaking around behind my back, acting like my best friend while you're screwing her?" He swallowed hard, a sheen of sweat breaking out on his forehead. I didn't mean for it to happen, man. It just happened?" I finished for him, my hands curling into fists. "That's what she said too. Real original." He took a step back, hands raised, palms out. "Derek, I'm sorry. It was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." "A mistake?" I cut him off, my voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Sleeping with my wife wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice you made over and over again." He stared at me, chest heaving, his eyes darting toward the hallway. Was he thinking of running? I almost hoped he would. It'd give me an excuse to break something else. "You think saying sorry is gonna fix this?" I hissed. "You think I'll just forget about it?" He winced, a muscle in his jaw ticking. "I'm not asking you to forget. I know I fucked up, okay? I know. But I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to." "To what?" I demanded. "To ruin my marriage? To stab me in the back?" "It wasn't like that," he said, his voice cracking. "It wasn't about you." I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Not about me? You fucked my wife, Ethan. You think I'd just roll over and take it?" His eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance flaring to life. "What do you want me to say, Derek? That I'm a piece of shit? Fine. I am. I know I am. But Emily," he broke off, lips pressing into a thin line. "What?" I challenged. What about Emily? He hesitated, his shoulders tensing. She came to me, he said finally, his voice a low rasp. She was the one who started it. She needed someone, and you, he bit off the words, but I heard them anyway. And you weren't there. Rage surged through me, white hot and blinding. I lunged at him, slamming him into the wall. His head hit the drywall with a dull thud, and he cried out, arms flailing. I barely felt his fists against my ribs, the weak jabs of someone who'd never been in a real fight. She was my wife, I growled, my forearm pressed against his throat. My wife. And you took her from me. He gasped, fingers scrabbling at my arm. I didn't, Derek, please. Do you love her? I demanded, pressing harder. Do you? His face turned red, veins standing out on his neck. And no, he choked. It was just, it didn't mean anything. I wanted to believe him. But the image of them together, of her lips on his, her hands on his skin, the sound she made for me spilling out of her mouth for him, seared itself into my mind, and I couldn't. I couldn't. I shoved him away, and he crumpled to the floor, gasping for air. I stood over him, chest heaving, my pulse a drumbeat in my skull. He lay there, curled in on himself, one hand cradling his throat. I should have walked away. I should have turned around, left him there, and gone back to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life. But I couldn't move. My feet were cemented to the floor, and my hands itched for violence, for something to break. I trusted you, I muttered, my voice low and raw. You were my brother, Ethan. I would have done anything for you. And this is how you repay me? He didn't answer. Just stared up at me, eyes wide and wet, his chest rising and falling in sharp, shallow bursts. I hope she was worth it, I said, my voice a rasp. Because you've lost everything now. Your best friend. Your job. Your reputation. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of piece of shit you are. Derek. No, I cut him off, stepping back. Don't. You don't get to talk anymore. You don't get to explain, or apologize, or beg. You made your bed. Now lie in it. I turned, fists clenched, and walked out. His voice followed me, thin and reedy, but I didn't look back. When I got to the truck, I sat behind the wheel, staring through the windshield. My chest burned, and my throat felt tight. The world had turned on its head, and I was the last one to know. I don't remember the drive home. Couldn't tell you how I made it there without wrapping my truck around a tree. My hands were still trembling, knuckles raw and bloodied, but I couldn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything past the numbness swallowing me whole. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Emily's car was gone. For a second, I just sat there, engine idling, headlights carving two pale paths across the empty porch. I half expected her to come rushing out, eyes red and face crumpled, spewing apologies that wouldn't mean a damn thing. But the door stayed shut, the windows dark and empty. I killed the engine and climbed out, the night air sharp and bitter in my lungs. My legs felt like rubber as I made my way up the porch steps, fumbled with my keys, and finally shoved the door open. The silence hit first, thick and suffocating, pressing in on all sides. The living room was empty, the kitchen dark. Rocky came padding out from the hallway, tail wagging, and pressed his nose into my palm with a soft whine. I sank to my knees, fingers curling into his fur, and dragged in a shaky breath. She's gone, Bud, I rasped. She's really gone. He whined again, licking my cheek, and the first tear broke loose, hot and humiliating as it slid down my face. My chest heaved, breaths coming sharp and shallow, and before I knew it, I was doubled over on the living room floor, hands shaking and jaw clenched so tight it felt like my teeth might crack. I don't know how long I stayed there, long enough for my legs to go numb, long enough for the darkness outside to bleed into dawn. It wasn't until the first light crept through the curtains that I finally forced myself to move, to stand, to peel my broken ass off the floor. The bedroom was a mess, dresser drawers hanging open, clothes spilled across the floor. My side of the bed was still neatly made, but the blankets were rumpled on hers, the pillows dented like she'd spent half the night clutching them. The red dress she'd worn was crumpled at the foot of the bed, a pair of heels kicked into the corner. I stared at it, a fresh wave of nausea twisting in my gut. Her suitcase was gone. A few drawers emptied. The picture frame that usually sat on her nightstand, the one from our wedding day, her in white and me in a suit that still itched just thinking about it, was face down, glass cracked. The anger flared again, a bright, vicious spark, and before I could think twice, my fist crashed into the wall. Pain shot up my arm, but I barely felt it. The ring was still on my finger, golden dull in the pale morning light. I twisted it, the skin underneath raw and chafed, but I couldn't bring myself to take it off. Not yet. Not until I could look at it without wanting to throw up. I spent the rest of the morning moving like a ghost, drifting from room to room, picking up stray socks and folding blankets just to keep my hands busy. Her absence hung in the air, sharp and suffocating, her perfume clinging to the sheets, her favorite coffee mug half full in the sink. Even Rocky seemed to feel it, padding from room to room with his ears flat and his tail low. I poured a drink at noon, whiskey, cheap and harsh, burning all the way down. The second went down easier. By the third, my hands weren't shaking anymore. Her phone was on the counter, abandoned beside a set of keys she never used. I stared at it for a long time before I picked it up, thumb hovering over the screen. The lock screen flashed a photo of us from last summer, smiling on the dock, her head on my shoulder. I swiped up, the password muscle memory by now. Messages popped up first. Dozens of them. From Ethan. Can we talk? Please don't shut me out. Emily, I'm sorry. I should have stopped it. Just call me. My vision swam, the letters blurring and doubling, but I forced myself to scroll. Forced myself to read every sick, sweet word, the pet names and the promises, the I miss yous and the late night confessions. Photos. Videos. Her face flushed and smiling, his hand at the small of her back, lips brushing her ear. I barely made it to the sink before I threw up. Pete came by around 6. I didn't hear him pull up, but the knock at the door was heavy and hesitant, like he wasn't sure if I'd even answer. I didn't want to. I didn't want to face anyone, not him, not the questions, not the pity in his eyes. But the thought of being alone again, with only the silence and my own shredded thoughts, was worse. When I yanked the door open, his eyes went wide, taking in the bruises on my knuckles, the hollow look in my eyes. Jesus, Derek, he breathed. You look like hell. Feel like it too, I muttered, stepping back to let him in. He took one look around the living room at the bottle on the coffee table, the half-empty glass, Rocky curled miserably by the couch, and his face fell. She's gone, he guessed quietly. I huffed out a bitter laugh. Yeah, I said hoarsely. She's gone. He scrubbed a hand over his face, sighing. Shit, man, he muttered. I don't even know what to say. Don't, I growled. Just don't. We stood in silence for a long moment, the tick of the clock loud and grating. He shifted, jaw working like he wanted to ask something but couldn't figure out how. Finally, he cleared his throat. What are you gonna do? He asked softly. I stared at my hands, the split knuckles, the bruises already darkening. I thought of Ethan's face, the shock and pain, the broken look in Emily's eyes. I don't know, I rasped. File for divorce, I guess. Pete flinched, like the words hurt him too. Shit, he muttered again. I'm so damn sorry, man. I squeezed my eyes shut, the lump in my throat nearly choking me. Yeah, I said, voice raw. Me too. That night, I took my ring off. It sat heavy in my palm for a long time, cold and weighty and all wrong. I stared at it, thumb brushing over the inscription on the inside, the words she'd picked out, the ones that had felt like a promise. Forever and always. My chest ached, tight and raw, but I forced myself to set it on the nightstand, next to the face-down photo frame. The bed felt too big, the sheets too cold, her absence a gaping hole I couldn't escape. I stared at the ceiling, every breath shaky and sharp, and waited for dawn. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer. Tomorrow, I'd start packing her things, clean out the closet, scrub her scent from the sheets. Tomorrow, I'd figure out how to keep breathing, keep moving, keep going. But tonight, I closed my eyes, pressed my face into her pillow, and tried to remember how it felt to fall asleep beside her.